Thank you very much for joining my session. I do very much appreciate it. My name is Sharon Smith. I'm a Senior Dynamics 365 Solution Architect working with the awesome Capgemini. I'm also a dual BizApps MVP, one of only 4 in the world who actually holds both the dual award in customer insights and customer service, which hopefully means that I do actually have a little bit of an idea of what I'm actually talking about when I'm talking about collapsing the BizApps and the AIs and the agents that are very much over the last 12 to 18 months driven quite a revolution in the Dynamics user interface and the user experience. Apologies if you hear any background noise behind me at any point in time. I'm very lucky at the moment to actually be in the Museum of Computing in Milton Keynes at Bletchley Park, where my Mentoring Hub speaker team has been speaking this morning. So if there is any sort of somebody, I'm actually sitting in an amazing room, an archiving room in the museum. So if somebody actually wonders why the door is propped open and comes investigating and disturbs us, that's actually why. So just to give you a little bit of background information in case if we get disturbed. So this is today's agenda. I've kind of like already covered who I am. And then we're going to go into the collapsing what. What exactly are we actually talking about when we're collapsing business applications? And I'll be just popping off of the deck momentarily then to share with you a video which hopefully will actually give you a good idea of what we're actually talking about or we're talking about, because as we all know, in the world of the Microsoft, things change very, very rapidly. And then hopefully what I'll be able to do is give you a bit of an insight of where I think the future is lying when we get the opportunity to look at Project Sophia, which is a big passion project of mine. Well, it's not my project, it's just something I'm very passionate about, which I'm hoping is going to be something that not many of you have seen before. Give you a bit of context as to why it's important and look at what the future might hold. And then hopefully we'll come back round again with some questions at the end. So like I said, that's who I am. Those are my QR codes, my LinkedIn account and my Heuristic Dev website. So if you're not already actually connected with me, then please do feel free to actually connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in what we do as a charity with the Mentoring Hub, if you actually go to the Mentoring Hub's site via either my website or LinkedIn, you can find out more there. So collapsing BizApps what? So this is where this particular part of this story actually starts, because this story, like I said, it's been going on for about 18 months for me. I actually first spotted that something different was happening as far as Dynamics was concerned back in November 2023, when, for those of you who know Dynamics, and I will actually show you Dynamics briefly in a minute, you'll know that the Microsoft's first-party apps, the out-of-the-box apps, for those of you who work in the Power Platform and are more used to Canvas apps and model-driven apps, Microsoft's own version of the model-driven apps, it's been very kind of like stuck in its very formatted ways for a very long time. It has 3 columns, it has a business process flow going across the top. It's been that way for a long time. Back November before last, all of that started to change inside of field service to begin with. And we started to actually see the first hints of what we now know is Copilot and the AI side of things inside Dynamics coming through. And I followed that journey for basically a year last year, seeing how things were changing. And you can find out a lot more about that journey on my website, where you'll see the blogs, and you'll also be able to find all the decks of all the speaking sessions that I did last year about that, if you're kind of like interested in that journey. And then we got to January this year, and we basically had Satya Nadella coming along on this, or that as I now call it, BG2 podcast. And this is what he actually said. So bear with me a moment. I'm just going to see if I can come off of that. make sure I come into the right place. This is what I was mentioning before about dynamics. This is what dynamics looks like. Actually, this is a nicer version of dynamics at the moment. There's no business process flow. There's only 2 columns, not 3, but gives you an idea for those of you who haven't seen dynamics before, what it looks like. This is the video I want to play you, and just listen to what Satya is saying here. Now, the question that precedes this, the interviewer obviously being the gentleman on the left-hand side, he was asking, about, the impact that AI was having on Microsoft's own applications.
Apologies, Sharon, you're not sharing with audio.
Right, the audio is not coming through, is it?
No, there is an additional checkbox whenever you share your screen in the top right corner to include sound.
Right, okay, bear
You'll
with
need
me.
To
how do I actually get that from? Do I need to stop sharing and reshare then?
Yes, if you stop sharing and reshare, and then when you click share, there's an option to include sound.
Right, okay, bear with me. So when I then share, include sound, and include sound. Let's into here. Right. Let's try again.
Space is off into the races, and you guys are doing well, and there's a lot of venture-backed players there. On some of the productivity apps, I have a question about the co-pilot approach, and I guess Mark Benioff's been kind of obnoxiously critical on this front and called it Clippy 2 or whatever. Do you worry that someone might think kind of first principles AI from ground up, and that some of the infrastructure, say in an Excel spreadsheet, isn't necessary to know if you did an AI first product? And the same thing, by the way, could be said about the CRM, right? There's a bunch of fields and tasks that may be able to be obfuscated for the user.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very, very important question. The SaaS applications or biz apps, so let me just speak of our own dynamics thing.
Right.
The approach at least we're taking is, I think the notion that business applications exist.
Hello, my name is Carl. I thought about doing some AI slop advert just to kind of sell you something today, but I figured I'll just...
Yeah, my apologies.
That's probably where they'll all collapse, right, in the agent era. Because if you think about it, right, they are essentially CRUD databases with a bunch of business logic. The business logic is all going to these agents. And these agents are going to be multi-repo CRUD, right? So they're not going to discriminate between what the backend is. They're going to update multiple databases, and all the logic will be in the AI tier, so to speak. And once the AI tier becomes the place where all the logic is, then people will start replacing the backends, right? We people, that's what, in fact, it's interesting. As we speak, I think we are seeing pretty high rates of wins on Dynamics backends and the agent use. And we are going to go pretty aggressively and try and collapse it all, right? Whether it's in customer service, whether it is in, by the way, the other fascinating thing that's increasing is just not CRM, but even our what we call finance and operations. Because people want more AI native biz apps, right? That means the biz app, the logic tier can be orchestrated by AI and AI agents. So in other words,
so I'll just stop it there, but because he does, well, it's Satya, he does go on a bit. But basically, as you can hear, this is what he was saying. So he was basically saying that, for those who don't know the acronyms, CRUD, that's your create, you read, your update, you delete. It's basically saying all those things that we're used to doing in Dynamics itself, manually keying, that's not going to necessarily be, they're going to aggressively get rid of that. And all we're going to see is basically have an interface, what they call the UI for AI, the user interface for AI. That's all you need, because all the logic, all the business rules, everything else is just going to be sitting in the AI layer, and we don't need anything else. And you can imagine that this absolutely kind of like blew up at the beginning of the year. And there was absolutely loads and loads of comments on LinkedIn and posts saying Dynamics is dead. And where we then first started to see this coming was getting immersive. What we used to see as the immersive Copilot homepage in the Dynamic Sales app. Now, the Dynamic Sales app is the one that I briefly showed you when we went to the video. And what you saw in the first 8 months of the year was this immersive Copilot homepage, which was in public preview that you could actually go and use. As you can see, it sat at the top on the navigation bar on the left-hand side. And you could have a conversation, a prompt conversation, in the same way as you're actually, those of you who are used to using M365 Copilot Chat at the moment, or even if you do have the preview, M365's Chat Sales Agent, where it's very similar to this immersive homepage. It would bring up a certain number of prompts, as you can see on the page, where you could pick one of those starter prompts. One of the most common ones would be, as you're seeing there, show me my pipeline, because this is a sales app. And then basically, it would bring up the pipeline, the same pipeline that you would normally see if you were to look at your opportunities page. But then you could ask questions about it whilst you were in this nice immersive homepage environment. It would also give you the top 5 or 6 accounts that you should be looking at. It would be able to provide you with information about the competitors for those accounts. And you could have that conversation, that iterative conversation that we're more and more being taught to actually get used to having with Copilot and AI. And if you wanted to then actually go into the account proper, as you were more used to it in Dynamics, you would click on the hyperlink, the bold hyperlink, and it would then take you to that account or that record. And this conversation that you were having with Copilot, it would go with you from this immersive homepage into the sidebar. And I used to demonstrate this as part of my sessions for the first 8 months of the year. And I actually was speaking at Reading user group in the UK on Monday. And when I was preparing for that session, to do a session similar to this one, I couldn't find this. And I've been having a few problems with my tenant. So I thought, oh, I haven't set it up properly. So I went and basically back into the setup area, and like, yes, Copilot's turned on. Yes, I'm sharing it globally. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. It wasn't there. And this was kind of like very, very strange and very worrying to me. So I did what we always do when we're not quite sure what's going on. I went off to the Microsoft Learn Docs and found this. Copilot in Dynamics Sales in full screen is now deprecated, completely out of the blue. And it was like, well, hang on a minute. Satya was like saying, I'm collapsing biz apps. Everything is just going to be, a Copilot prompt page sitting on top of, some sort of AI layer. And now you're telling me that it's deprecated. And the interesting thing, and the reason why I've actually brought this up to actually show you, is because, we asked the question, why was it being deprecated? And the reason that it was given is that, as you can see, that last sentence in this area, this approach minimizes context switching and aligns with the strategy of engaging sellers directly within the grids and the forms. So basically, they're saying that we don't like context switching. We can't actually just have the immersive home page and do our prompting there and then go to the account. We have to have the account open and prompt in the sidebar. It was really, really baffling to me. Because it just did not fit. But it is what it is. So it's like I then sat back and thought, well, are we actually still going to see the collapse of dynamics? And it made me sit back and reflect, which, we should all do at times. And I thought, well, maybe yes, but maybe not for frontline users, maybe not for your sales executive, maybe not for your customer service operative. Obviously, we're not allowed to call them customer service agents anymore because the term agent is reserved purely for autonomous agents, for AI agents. So where does that take us? That takes us to Sophia. And I call Sophia a solution that was in need of a use case. So Sophia is another one of those interesting things that has been going on in the background behind Dynamics for a while, that I've been following for a while. And it was a passion project for one of the VPs, Julia, at Microsoft. She had this wonderful idea that you could have, and now this is going to actually kind of like trigger some ahas. Oh, I recognize that moments from some of you, in as much as she wanted to have a research canvas. And of course, we now know that in M365 Copilot, we have the research agent. But what she was talking about was something which was much more of a deep reasoning agent, which we are now starting to see with the introduction of ChatGPT-5. But this agent, this research agent she was looking at, goes a lot deeper. So I'm actually going to show you this. I demonstrated it at Reading on Monday night, and not many people had actually seen it. So I'm hoping that it's going to be the same for most of you, that you won't have actually seen Project Sophia before, and then it might actually give you a lot of food for thought about where we actually might be seeing not the frontline worker evolution. I think that's possible. It will change, but not in the direction that we originally might have thought after Satya said what he said in January, but certainly for that middle tier, that tier which very unfortunately we've seen Microsoft with their layoffs and their redundancies that happened over the last few months, that middle tier of business analysts and those who would put together reports for the C-suite has gone or has been greatly reduced. This is what I think is replacing that. So I'll agree. I'll sign in. The deck that will be shared will have the hyperlinks to Project Sophia. You can see you've got the URL up there that you can come along and you can actually play with it. All I would actually give as a caveat is to make sure that you remember you're in the web. This is a web browser. And so therefore you are not protected in the same way as if you actually had this inside Dynamics, which is where it's going. So it remembers me. Why does it remember me? Well, because I set its context. So what you'll see over here is you can see I've got manage my personal context. And within this manage my personal context, I can tell them, or I can tell Sophia who I am, and also whether or not I want Sophia to remember me. I can also load up my data dictionary or the dictionary of acronyms that I use. So as you can see, for example, when I was demonstrating this on Monday, I said, I am a marketing supervisor looking after a number of teams of marketing executives working in a global retail firm for domestic cleaning products. I'll leave that to your imagination, who that might be. And it's remembering me, and it's going, if I had a data dictionary of all those acronyms, I could have loaded it up here. So once I've actually done that, the other thing I need to do, and you can see we've got starter prompts, just like we would have in M365 Copilot, just like we would have had in the Sales Immersive homepage. But I also need to add data, because with that, if you don't actually have any data to actually interrogate, and as I said, we're not inside Dynamics here, we're not inside my tenant, I need to put the information in. But it is, I've logged in with my browser details. I've got a profile here which is linked to my profile I use with my tenant, and so it is actually recognizing my Dynamics. Now, my Dynamics tenants only have Microsoft's test data in it. So everything that you're going to see, you're not going to see huge, lovely amounts of data, but what you are going to see is information which is safe to actually see. It is basically Microsoft's own test data. And what you can do is you can upload from your Dynamic Sales app, you can upload from your customer service app, you could upload from your Dataverse if you had a model-driven app, for example, sitting on top of Dataverse. You can also upload CSV files. So what you could do is you could basically link this to the data in your sales app. You could upload a McKinsey report, or one of the reports which actually is looking at doing predictions of what is happening in a certain industry, or what a particular one of these particular marketing guru type firms thinks is going, the direction of travel is going to be in a particular market area. And so you could upload that PDF in the same way as you do so in Copilot Studio. Exactly the same way here. You're just opening up an upload, pick your file, upload it. Now I'm just going to link it to my sales, and as you can see, it's loading it in there, and then once it's loaded, it's telling me what's loaded there. If I wanted to add in something else, say I wanted to add in my customer service as well, it would load that in, and then it should actually add that in next door, but by the seams of it, it's not wanting to, so we're not going to worry about that too much. Remember, this is in public preview Project Sphere, so it's changing on a daily basis. But once you've actually got your data in there, then you choose your prompt. So let's say I want to know what the research opportunities for growth are in, looking across all my sales data. I click on this prompt and off it goes. And this is the beauty of Project Sophia, because what it is doing is analyzing all that data that's in my sales app, and it's basically answering that prompt, and it's creating a blueprint for me. And here we have the blueprint coming through. The blueprint on the left-hand side gives you that contextual information about what it's telling, what the question that it's answered. And of course, remember that it's answered that question in the context that I have given it. So it's answering it as if I was a marketing supervisor looking after a number of teams. And oh, look, Sharon Smith, absolutely outperforming her targets and her peers. Oh, what a surprise there. Given that Sharon Smith is the only person who's actually doing anything in this tenant, it'd be a bit worrying if she wasn't. But as you can see, what you get is you get the kind of information, this kind of like C-suite, what I call a C-suite type information on this left-hand side. what are the pipeline distributions? Where are the conversation gaps? What's the sales cycle, life cycle efficiency like? These are kind of like all the kind of the information that from supervisors upwards would really be interested in. And you could just take a copy of that and you could put it into a deck or a report to the board. Done. Why do you need an actual analyst to do that? And you've got all the supporting graphs alongside. If I wanted to know where this information came from, I just show the workings and it flips itself around and it then shows me these 4 agents. Now, these 4 agents are extremely important. And I'll tell you the reason why. And this is something that I actually only learnt on Monday, because I was very, very fortunate to have David Reed at the Reading UK user group on Monday evening. He is now at Hitachi. He was at Microsoft, though. And he actually was able to tell me that these agents are custom agents. And they have a lot, they sit on their own large language models. They're not the same agents that you would have working behind Copilot in Dynamics. These agents have been very, very highly trained. And the level and quality of information you get back from these agents is higher than what you, at the moment, than what you will get in M365 Copilot sales research agent. And that's just something very important to actually know and understand, because it was one of the questions that I was asked on Monday and I honestly didn't know the answer. But that is the beauty of community. We come together and we're able to actually share knowledge and information together and provide a much more enhanced understanding of what's going on. But what we're hoping is that this is the direction of travel. Now we've got something like GTP5, which is, as those who know about agents in the M365 arena, you'll know that if you're doing a deep analysis piece of work inside M365 Copilot, you should use GTP5. It takes a lot longer to get you the answer, but you're getting a much more detailed answer. Project Sophia, as you saw, I know we've only got a very small amount of data here, got you the answer very quickly. And that is because of these agents. These agents are much, much better than anything else you'll find out there. If I want to actually iterate, as we all know we should be iterating on the prompt, that original prompt that produced this, I can come to either one of these graphs and I can say, right, I want to iterate on this graph. And if I then go down into what they call this AI cursor, and I really don't like that term, but it is what it is. Again, you can see it's still telling me where my data is coming from. I can then basically say, I'm going to click on this prompt. This is where I'm wanting to iterate further on. But what I can also do is I can also decide on, I can regenerate these suggested prompts, whether if I don't find any prompt there that is quite where I want to go. But I can also add further data. So I might decide to go on a prompt and then say, right, okay, I'm taking it in a slightly different direction now. I want to put in somebody else's data. So instead of it looking at McKinsey's idea of where my sales might go, I want it to look at Gartner's, and I want it to actually, put in Gartner's predictions on what 2026 is going to look like and take it in that direction. But what I can then do is I can decide whether or not I'm actually going to generate a whole new blueprint or just change that particular graph. So if I'm changing that particular graph, I just iterate on that graph, and then you can do that basically up on these little ellipses there. If I want to do the whole blueprint, if I do this, what you should then see is it takes me off to a different blueprint. but I don't lose the blueprint I had before. And I don't know whether or not I've got a touch screen here that I'm making this screen slightly smaller. I don't know if you're actually seeing what I've actually done on my screen at this end, but what I'm now seeing is that on the left hand side I've got that original blueprint with that original prompting question I had, and now on this right hand side it's now generating me a new blueprint with that new prompt question that I had. And you can go on and on and on in this, expansive research canvas, as it's called, in order to basically iterate, ask questions. And you could imagine the power that this would actually have, especially for your C-suite levels, in order for them to actually just be able to ask any question that they want and have that information to hand straight away, just like this. And obviously, like I said, I haven't got a lot of data in here. But so that's why you haven't got lots of data points on the graph. But here we are. It's now giving me another blueprint. So I said that, I've spoken a lot about how this would be something which was very, potent for the C-suite type executives, your sales executives officers, your finance executive officers, your CEO, because they don't need to ask somebody to produce them a report themselves. Just give them Project Sophia and let them get on and do it themselves. So what about bringing it a little bit back closer to home and looking at it from a sales supervisor, which was my original prompt. When I was working on a project at my last organization, they were a events company that basically hosted a lot of events around the world for their own events and other organizations' events. And you would have the same sales team on a number of different events through the year. Now, what they were having with their dynamics was they basically had it so that they would have a Power BI report for event A, a Power BI report for event C, a Power BI report for event F, that the same sales agent was involved in each one of those events through the year, and their details would be on each of these different Power BI reports, but they might then change events. They might go on to help out on another event, and so they'd appear on the Power BI report for that event. But when you got to their supervisor who wanted to sit down and have a weekly or a monthly one-to-one with them, the only way they could do that one-to-one would be effectively to pick up each one of the Power BI reports of the different events that they were involved in and try and actually kind of like pull all that information together on their performance to do that one-to-one. And what they wanted was effectively one report for that one executive, one events executive. And obviously at that point in time, this was over a year ago, before agents bloomed as they have now, the thoughts were, are we actually then going to have to create effectively a separate Power BI report for each individual executive? Whereas here, you could just bring all the sales data, all the events data, if you had sales, if you have customer insights journey, all that data could just be brought into here. And all you need to then do is say, I am a sales manager who is doing a one-to-one with Sharon Smith, and I want to see all their performance information over the last 6 months, 12 months on all the events that they are actually engaged with. That's your prompt. And you would put it in here and it would give you charts and it would give you narrative without you having to do any further work. no Power BI production required. So strong, so potent. Now, what I said to you, if we come out of this, I said to you that Project Sophia was a solution that was looking for a home, because basically that's an expensive solution. Those custom agents that sit behind it doing all that good work, they're expensive to run, and they've taken a lot of training to get them that good. But Microsoft needs to monetize them. And it tried to actually put Project Sophia into the Copilot 4 instead of the Copilot in apps. So obviously we're used to seeing Copilot in Dynamics 365 Sales. That would be the Copilot that would produce you the summary of your case, or your the summary of your account. But the Copilot 4 Sales is that add-on application that you have to pay additional licensing fees for. And originally, I remember going to Scottish Summit last year and seeing a demonstration by one of Julia's team, who was showing me what the idea was at that time. And at that time, the idea was that you would have effectively the equivalent of Project Sophia in each of the Copilot for Sales, Copilot for Customer Service, Copilot for F&O, or as it is now, Copilot for Finance and Supply Chain, Copilot for HR. And that basically, eventually, you could bring all of this kind of data together so that you would be able to see, tie in the information that is in the sales app and the customer service app and the supply chain and the inventories that sit in F&O. It proved to be too complicated. It really did. And there's a blog, there is a podcast that Julia herself did on one of the Dynamics podcasts, where she talked about how complicated, earlier this year, about how complicated and difficult it was to get all of those different Copilot 4s and the different Sophia equivalents in the Copilot 4s to actually talk to each other. So where we ended up is the sales research agent. Microsoft's first attempt to actually monetize Project Sophia. Now, the only place you will see this at the moment is on one of the highlight videos of one of the, to be honest, I think it was the 2025 release wave 1, not the most recent release wave that we've just had, the one before, where it wasn't mentioned in the actual release wave documentation, but if you watch the highlights video, we saw it in here. The interesting thing that I found now, looking at this with hindsight, is that this is a screenshot that's taken from that video. And if you actually look, on the left-hand side's navigation bar, you can see that we have the sales research agent there at the fourth item under my work on the left-hand side. But where I would have originally at this point in time expected to have seen the Copilot immersive homepage, that was gone. And I didn't actually notice it when I first actually watched this video, that Copilot, the Copilot immersive homepage was no longer being shown. If I had, that would have actually shown me the direction of travel that things were going, but I didn't notice that. Sales Research Agent, though, as I said, it's actually not even available inside Dynamics in public preview yet. The only way you can actually get it, if I just basically flick across these, or when I do flick across these, like you'll see, is that it is only available if you are part of a Microsoft accelerator. And this is for those companies who are currently on-prem, who are going into the cloud, where Microsoft will provide them with not only the assistance to move from on-prem to the cloud, but they will provide them with the sales researcher agent inside D365 Sales, and they will provide them with assistance from their expert AI black belts to get everybody up, basically to, everybody who's on-prem up to where all of those of us who are in the cloud are supposed to be, but they get the added benefit of getting the sales researcher agent and the beauty that is Project Sophia as part of that rollout. I suppose what I'm, cynically looking at that is that a big enough carrot to dangle in front of people to get them to move from on-prem into the cloud, when, as we see here, we actually have now Copilot Sales Chat Agent. And as we saw when it was actually, given the reasons why we were deprecating the immersive homepage, which is very similar to this, because we were being told that people didn't want to click all over the place. So why have we got this? Why have we actually got, the sales chat agent inside M365, not even inside Dynamics? And apparently this is, two reasons. One reason, it is because it is where people are thought to actually be existing. So we're all thought to be existing in Microsoft 365 Copilot instead of actually in Dynamics. But also this, because it's outside Dynamics, this doesn't just have to sit on top of D365 sales. It can also sit on top of Salesforce. It can sit on top of ServiceNow. And this is where the truth of the collapsing biz apps comes from. It's more about collapsing those competition points between Microsoft and Salesforce and any other CRM provider you can think of. And Microsoft basically recognizing that, okay, it has tried to collapse the biz apps in on each other. It can't do it. It's too complicated for Microsoft. So what it's doing is it's basically doing what it can do, which is Copilot chat, and putting that on top of the CRM. And here we are back with an immersive homepage and prompting. And it will be wherever you want it to be. So your sales agent could live inside Teams. It doesn't have to actually be in the M365 Copilot homepage you're used to. You can actually have it working inside Teams wherever you want to be. And this is a regular cycle of Microsoft in Dynamics, where we seem to go from only inside Dynamics, anywhere you are, only inside Dynamics, anywhere you are, as long as it's in another part of the Microsoft workspace. So this is the Microsoft AI Accelerator for Sales that I mentioned. As I said, you'll get this deck. The QR codes on every one of these pages takes you to the Microsoft Learn Doc page about this, so that if you want to do some more of your own research, you can. And the other thing, there's two more things. I'm conscious of time. There's two more things that I just did want to bring to your attention about this idea of collapsing Dynamics or collapsing biz apps. And part of it is actually collapsing biz apps inside of biz apps. So what you're seeing here is again, this is a screenshot from one of the highlight videos. And this is showing the Dynamics 365 Contact Center for Sales, which didn't exist, in the Dynamics 365 Contact Center for Service, which we do know exists. So that's the contact center as a service that you can actually put on top of your Dynamics. Well, I think they call it Copilot Workspace now, but next week it will be called something completely different, I'm sure. And what you can actually see is this is a representative who is working in a contact center, who's got a service call that they're dealing with, and say it's good old Contoso coffee and the coffee machine is broken. Instead of you having to go out of the Dynamics Contact Center for Service in order to raise an order for a part, or for that coffee machine, or even a whole new coffee machine, you're able to do that actually inside of D365 Contact Center for Service without you having to actually go effectively over to the sales to raise an order. That's coming. The other thing that we're seeing coming, flip over that, is not from Microsoft. It's from ServiceNow. Now, I won't actually play you because we're a bit shy on time, I won't play you the recording of this particular podcast, but this is a podcast from Bloomberg Talks. And again, you've got the link to it there. And the CEO of ServiceNow, similar in a very similar way to how Satya did back in January, this was in July this year. And the CEO of ServiceNow was talking about why the price of his sales, how the performance of his shares, not sales, sorry, the performance of his shares, why they were doing so well on the marketplace. And one of the reasons was there was an announcement pending of a tie-up with Google, interestingly, because the other thing is that, he does say on the podcast, it's all about the agents. And what ServiceNow have done that Microsoft couldn't do is they have taken their CRM, their sales, their service CRM, their equivalent of field service, their equivalent of HR, their equivalent of the back office, and they've collapsed them together. ServiceNow only have one app, and that is going ballistic because if you're talking about clicking, too many clicks and too much context switching, ServiceNow have managed to do it. But the interesting thing I will leave you with is that's a big, big difference to Microsoft. But Microsoft are recognizing that, okay, they can't do that with their apps, and they might turn around and say, well, we're not, that's a mid-market kind of level type of app that you're looking for there. That's for the small and medium-sized organizations where we provide services for enterprise level for the big boys. So, they want it one at a time with all the guardrails and protections that Microsoft can put around it. If you go into create an app yourself and create your own agent, if you go in and you look at the pre-built agents that are already there, what you will find is if you go and say, right, I want to go and play around with the case management agent, you've got a pre-built case management agent already there. But when you actually then start to try and work your way through it to set it up, you'll find that you have to have a license and a subscription to ServiceNow, which blew my mind. It's like, I want to actually trial a Microsoft pre-built agent, and yet I need a ServiceNow subscription. Why am I not actually subscribing why am I not able to actually connect it to customers, Microsoft's customer service? And this is because last November, among other things, Microsoft signed a bigger collaboration deal with ServiceNow. So it's almost like, that Microsoft have realized they can't collapse biz apps, not in the way that they originally said that they wanted to. And instead, they're allowing others to collapse their apps together, and they will provide the agent interface and the agent extendability to sit on top of the likes of ServiceNow and the likes of Salesforce. So thank you very much for your time. As I said, that's my LinkedIn if you want to connect with me. And if there's any questions, anybody got any questions that they want to ask off of that, please just open the floor now.